Alright, welcome back everybody. My name is Dustin, and in the last video, we actually started going over how to do some of the undo, redo functions for the Tilemap Editor here. And in this video, we're going to actually start looking into how we're going to approach toolbars for our engine. There are many ways that we could approach doing toolbars for our editor and for our engine. Well, mostly the editor. The engine itself doesn't need toolbars. Let's take a look at Tiled. So if you take a look at Tiled here, there's a main toolbar that goes across the top. That's for the current map that you're working on right now. Then if you look at the smaller windows here, they all have somewhat of a toolbar that is specific to the window itself, right? So that's something similar to what I want to do. I'm not going to have this main bar across the top, but we are going to have something similar. Instead, we're going to set it up to have a simple optional toolbar for each window or display that we create in our engine. And it's only going to contain buttons that are relative to the display itself. So right now, we don't really have any toolbars. If we take a look at the scene hierarchy, we could have a search bar up here or a plus button for adding simple game objects. So instead of having to right click and you can just click the button, it'll automatically add a game object in. If we look at the scene already has somewhat of a toolbar here. I'm going to change this a little bit so everything has a toolbar option. And our Tilemap Editor, we're going to want to have a toolbar at the top of the Tilemap Editor. So when we click on the Tilemap Editor, it'll show its own specific thing for tools. We could have all the tool change buttons for create tile, rect tile, and along with the game object translate. So when we have a game object and we want to translate it, or scale gizmos, rotation gizmos, we want to have these all at the top of our Tilemap Editor because that's where all the work is going to be done. Okay. And if we look at the tile set, we can also fix this up a little bit because this is basically a toolbar as well because it doesn't change. So we can move this around, add a plus button to add a new tile set, make this a bit cleaner instead of having it look like this. So say we start getting into like a content display, we're going to want to have the names of the folders that we're currently in like at the top. That'll be the toolbar. So it'll say like each folder that we're in, and you'll be able to click on it and it'll take you to that specific folder. That will be the toolbar for the, and we could probably fix this up as well, have this because this is basically the toolbar for the asset display, because when you open it, it ends up having a child. This is a child here, which isn't the toolbar. So we can actually split these up, make it a bit nicer looking. So for today, we're going to start adding toolbars, or getting into adding toolbars. And we will also clean up the scene display toolbar. We'll clean this up and then add a toolbar for the Tilemap Editor. So that's the goal for today. So we can finally start changing the tools that we're using. Instead of having to do it in code, we'll be able to click a button at the top of the display and change the tool that we're actually using. All right, so let's get into it. So if we take a look at our scene display, let's open that up right now. So if we go to our displays, and go to scene display here, we're using an image button right down. Where are we doing this? Right here, we're using this image button, which needs these textures, right? And these are great, but we're going to change how we're doing this a little bit. So I made some utility functions to help us out. Instead of doing all this extra stuff in the scene here, or in the scene display, I actually moved this to a utility function. See how I'm just setting it as a held color. So all the button hovered, the button active, and the button itself are all set to the same color. And that's because it's basically trying to state that the button itself is held. Okay, so let's go to our utilities that we created for ImGui. ImGui utilities, and I added these recently. So we're gonna have a black transparent. That is for, say we don't want to have any color for the button, but we just want the button itself. We don't want to have anything like hovering or whatever. It just needs to be there. Button held, this is going to be the color for the button held, which is the same color as this here. So I know that it's held. And I also created these little functions here. So active button, disabled button for disabled, active image button, and disabled image button. So this is basically to gray it out, and basically it's just wrappers around ImGui stuff just to make it cleaner. Instead of just calling all this each time, it just calls this function which does that for us, and that's what I want to do. So all I'm doing is setting the color to the button held color because it's an active button, or you could call this held button, it's up to you. And then we're just popping the style off at the end. Okay, if we go back here, we have our different sizes, and we're going to have a tool button size similar to the label single size idea that we had before. So each tool button is going to have its own size, and that's going to be 32 by 32. You could change this to whatever you like, but that's what I'm going to be using. Okay, so first thing I want to do is actually put an optional draw toolbar in our eye display up here. So the same as we did our update function, I want to add a new draw toolbar. Now this is going to be optional. It's not going to be pure like this one, so you don't have to override it, but it's going to be overrideable. And if you don't do anything, it's not going to be. And we're also going to want to make this a protected, because the toolbar stuff won't need to be outside of the display itself. We don't need to call this outside of the display itself. For these functions, we want to be able to call it outside. This one I don't. We can actually end up changing this to a class. And to do that, we have to change that, add a public section here. You don't have to change it to a class, but we'll do it and see how that goes. Let's just build this right now to make sure it still works. So we just go to build, and we'll just go rebuild. Awesome, so the build worked fine. So let's start with our scene display and clean this up a little bit, okay? So here, we have our private section. Let's make a protected section. Protected. And we're going to say virtual void draw toolbar override. All right, cool. So we have our toolbar, and we're going to want to make this. So basically, all I'm going to want to do here is let's take this here. And where are we drawing our toolbar stuff? Yeah, so all this, we can actually put this, all of this. We can put this right here. We'll draw a toolbar first. And what I want to do is I want to grab all of this stuff. All of this. The render scene can stay. Actually, let's move this first. And we'll put this here. We move the render scene, and we want to take all of this button stuff and put this into our draw toolbar instead. So all of this, except for where we begin child, that can stay. So cut this. We'll fix that error in a second. And let's put this into the draw toolbar. Cool. And I'm going to want to make some changes here. So we're doing all this extra stuff with the num style colors and all this. This could actually be done now with the active button that we created. So what I want to do is we'll actually just delete this. And we'll keep those. Keep that. And we'll create a new Scion assert. We're putting this here because these two textures should already be part of the engine. These should be embedded textures or whatever that we created. Okay. And then we just want to assert that these are good. MP play texture and MP stop texture. Those should be there. We don't even need a message. Those should actually already be there. And we can get rid of all of this. Let's make sure that we included our utilities, ImGui utilities that we created. Editor utilities, I don't see it, so we can do that. Include editor utilities, ImGui utils. That should be good. Let's go back down wherever we are. Right here. Cool. And what I'm going to want to do is I want to add, so instead of doing this and not scene loaded here, let's get rid of this. Put this in here. And scene loaded. So if we are playing the scene and the scene is loaded, I want to just have an active image button. ImGui active image button. And that's just going to be the P play texture. But we can't just do that. We need to send in the ID. So what I would like to do is, instead of doing all this inline here, we can just grab this, because we're going to use it in two different places. Because we're going to need to have an active image button, and then we're going to need to have the image button if it's not already active, okay? So we can go auto, play texture ID is equal to that. So now that we have an ID, we can take this, place this in here, and that should work for us. Now we don't need to do the if statement here for this button, because this is basically just going to be an indicator now, and it's going to be held, okay? And this will be changed only with the stop button. However, if it's not play scene and not scene loaded, then we're going to want to have the regular image button. So we go else, and then we can grab all of this, paste that in there, and we can actually remove all of this. And I'm going to want to put another parentheses, grab the ID here, and we need to do the size, and that's just going to be tool button size. We created that in the ImGui utils here, and that's just 32 by 32. Feel free to make this whatever size works for you, but I have it as 32 by 32. Cool. And that should work the way that I want. This button will only be active if this is not placing and not loaded. Then you can actually use this button. Okay? That means we don't need any of this anymore. We can get rid of that. We can have our tooltip. That's fine. So we have this set tooltip. We probably don't have to do it this way anymore. We have that helper function that I created. We probably don't even need this, to tell you the truth. But I'm going to leave that in. And we can leave that there as well. And we're going to want to do the same thing for the other button. Okay? So what we can do is we could probably actually just get rid of all of this and just change accordingly. So let's get rid of everything here. And let's copy everything except for that. So we can just copy this and paste this here and change this to the stop texture ID. Change this to stop. So now, in order to, we can put this here. We can put this here. And this needs to be unload scene. Cool. So basically, we're almost done. We just have to adjust this here. So this is only going to be active if we're not playing this scene and the scene is not loaded. Then it'll be an indicator saying that the scene has been stopped. And then it'll allow us, if it's not stopped, so this one will be playing, then we can actually stop it here using this one. That's it. Let's build this and see how that looks. Now it's going to change the size of the active image button. Let's actually take a look at what's going on in here. Yeah, so we're basically doing the same thing. We're just changing the color. Now, one thing I do notice is if we go back here is and I looked this up yesterday, the image button actually has extra padding, and you can get rid of the padding if you like. There's extra padding around each image button that a regular button doesn't have. So if you put an image button beside a regular button, the image button, even if you tell it to be the tool button size, the image button will have extra padding around it, making it larger. So let's actually run this. So we have an error, and that's just this here, and I said we were going to fix that. I forgot. But what we can do, all we're doing is getting the main registry. We can actually just change this to main registry, like that. Cool. Run it again. Awesome. Oh, if you see how that worked there, right? The buttons are much larger, and if you look closely around, it has a padding around each one because the actual button itself only has those white lines. So it has extra padding around it, and we can remove that with pushing and popping style vars or style variables. But there we go, and it's much cleaner, and the code's cleaner, and let's make sure it works the same way. So let's add a scene. Just a Tilemap Editor, make sure we have our scene, and if I play, it should run the scene for us. Cool, and you see how the play button is now highlighted, and if I hit stop, the stop button's now highlighted, and it works just the way that it did. Awesome, good stuff. Okay, so let's get out of this. Let's add a couple more things to make this a bit cleaner, and 32 by 32 does look rather large for those buttons. So let's add a few more things here. Right here, before our button, I'm going to add a ImGui separator. And then let's copy this line. Let's go down to the bottom of this and add another one here, ImGui separator. So now it's going to have two lines encasing it. And we're going to want to add, well, we don't have to add, but you can remove the padding of these buttons just by adding in some pushing of styles. We can do that right here. I can go ImGui push style var, and it's going to be ImGui style var, and this is frame padding, the one we want to look at, frame padding. And what I want to do is put 0 here, 0.f, 0.f. Cool. So if you remember, if you push a style, you have to pop a style, and I want both buttons to have this style. So if I come down here, I will pop it at the bottom. You can pop it, actually, I'll pop it here. So ImGui pop style var. Now it defaults to 1, I'll put one in anyway because we're only pushing one, but you can have different styles here that you want specific for your toolbar buttons, okay? That's why I want to have a separate function for drawing toolbars. Cool. Now let's run it and see how that looks. Awesome, looks much cleaner. Buttons, see how there's no more padding around the button, it's just the button itself. That looks way better. Awesome, I like it. And that still works for us. It looks a lot cleaner. I like it. Remember, you guys can make changes however you like. So now we're going to look into the Tilemap Editor. I want to start doing the toolbar for this one. But I don't want to use the image buttons that we used here because I don't want to make all those images. The ones I do have, I did make them already. But there's actually a better way to do this. Well, I don't know if it's a better way, but it's a cleaner way, a more simple way where I don't have to embed these textures. We can actually just use FontAwesome, and that has some wonderful pre-made icons. So let's check that out right now. Awesome, right here. So all we have to do is go to the GitHub Juliet F icon font CPP headers. This is perfect for us, okay? And there's some free stuff that we can use here. And if we scroll down a bit, we can see that it already has an example of how to add this into our code right here. So all we need to do is add something like this into our editor, and it'll be ready to go. So you just want to load the fonts based on the font icon file name, and that is inside the include file that we're going to need for FontAwesome here. Up here, if we go to, we're going to be using number 5, the free option. So we're going to be using right here, icons FontAwesome 5.h. That's what we're going to be using. Let's scroll down a little bit. And we can see how it actually looks. See that? That's what it'll look like. See these icons beside everything? It's very clean and professional looking, like a real application. Awesome. I love this. That's exactly what we're looking for our editor. And that's what we're going to do. So great. We're going to be using the free version up here. And in order to do that, we're also going to need to grab the font. So you see how it says FontAwesome free. We're going to need to get this font here, FA Solid 900. There's other ones you could use. You can grab all of them if you like, but this is the one I'm going to use. So let's grab that. So just go here, and we're just going to want to download raw file. Awesome, that's going there. Along with that, we're also going to need the H file. So let's go back to where we were. And that's up here. The .h file, and we're going to want to get the raw here, and we'll come back to that in a second. Let's take a look at our code, close this, and let's make a new folder. So we have our editor, systems, utilities. So that will be, we can put that in utilities. Let's add a new folder, and we'll call this fonts. And inside of the fonts folder, let's add a new file. And this is going to be icon FontAwesome 5.h. Cool. Yep, we'll add it to our executable. And let's go back to the website. And we're going to go Control A, Control C, copy all of this, go back into our code, and just paste it in. Cool. So this will give us everything we need there. And let's actually quickly go back into this here to the website and take a look, because that took us to, when we grabbed the font, it actually took us to the FontAwesome website. Let's see what kind of license, if it even has a license here, that it needs. So it has this license, and we might need to copy this. Yeah, we'll just copy this. Cool. Let's go to raw. Copy that. And let's go back to our code, or our project. And here, we're going to put the fonts just in the editor, in the assets here. So we already have a fonts folder. It's empty right now, and that's fine. So in here, let's add a new file. And this can just be license.txt. Paste that license. That has the FontAwesome license. Great. Save that. And let's go to our download that we have. I wonder if I can drag that right into there. Let's see. Yeah, awesome. That worked. That's exactly what I wanted to do. So now we have our file. It's in our Scion Editor Assets Fonts folder. And now we want to actually add in the code right here. So we want to add this stuff in. So we can do that in our application.cpp. So let's do that now. So we can probably just close this, keep that open for now. We can keep the rest open, that's fine. And let's go to application.cpp. In our init ImGui function, we can add this in here. We can probably just do this right here. I can go io.fonts add font default, then static const im wchar icon ranges is equal to icon fa icon min fa, but it doesn't know what this is because we need to include our FontAwesome file up here, and we can do that right here. So include editor, utilities, fonts, icons, FontAwesome 5.h. Great. Let's go back down right here. Now it'll have that, and we want to go icon max 16 fa. Awesome. So once we have that in, we can actually just, let's actually just go back and see what we need. So it's doing this. We can actually just copy this stuff here. Let's actually just copy this whole thing. No need to rewrite it. Copy. And we might as well just go over top of this. Should have did this in the first place instead of typing it all out. Paste it in. Control KD. Let's get rid of these comments, just so it's cleaner. Cool. And that should load it in for us. The only problem is this here, if we go to this, this is not where that is, right? So it's going to be looking for that, and we're going to need to actually load that in correctly. So what we're going to need to do is go assets, fonts, then that should load that in for us, okay? So let's make sure that works. So let's go back to our application. This should all work. I assume that this should work. Let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? So what I'm going to want to do is go to my project and configure cache. Let's go delete and reconfigure. Cool. All right. So now that we have that, and we can actually do a build. Let's just run it and see what happens. We'll know if this works because it'll fail. And we got an error. What's that error? Let's see. So fonts is empty. That's good to know. Let's go back. Oh, we didn't have the add default fonts. I missed that. So we're going to need to make sure that's in. I swore I put that in already. Must not have copied that. Let's go back here. Yeah, I grabbed everything underneath. Okay, so let's go back. And this needs to be right here. And we'll try again. Awesome. So no errors. Well, that we didn't have it set to do any errors, but that's all right. Cool. So that we have that loaded, we can now start putting in our buttons for the Tilemap Editor. So let's go to our Tilemap Editor, and that is in Displays, Tilemap Display, and we're going to have to add in our protected. That's virtual void DrawToolbar. Override. Cool. Now that I made that, we can actually put this in. Copy this, and that can go right here. We'll have it be the first thing that it does, and let's start filling this out. So before we start filling this out, let's actually do some includes. So up at the top, include, editor, utilities. We're going to need ImGui, utils.h. We're going to need the fonts, editor, utilities, fonts, icons, font. Awesome. Cool. And before we continue, I'm going to want to have the gizmos eventually. We're going to start getting into gizmos, but we're going to have the idea of the gizmo. So we need to go to our tools accessories and add that in. So let's go to our tools accessories. Right. Where is that? That's in our tools. Tools accessories right here. And we're going to add in a new type here. Instead of just the tool type, we're going to have gizmo as well. They're going to be slightly different. Like they're going to basically be an abstract tool, but they're also going to be from an abstract gizmo. So we're going to have to say enum class gizmo type. And we're going to have translate is equal to 0. So it's going to have the translate gizmo. We're going to have a scale gizmo. And I believe we're going to have a rotate gizmo as well. Probably not going to need it. No gizmo will be the last one. Cool. So now that we have these concepts here, I actually need to go to the tool manager and add that in there because we need to know which one is active. So we need to be able to see that. So let's go to the tool manager.h. And we've already got the tool type forward declared, and you can forward declare the gizmo type as well. And since we have those right in our private area, we can go e tool type, me active tool type, and then we can have the active gizmo type as well. Cool. We're going to have some getters for these. Right here. We'll say e tool type get active tool type. This can be const return me active tool type. We can make this inline. Copy this down. E gizmo type active gizmo, and then active gizmo type. Cool. And we're also going to want to have a way to set the active gizmo type. We'll add the function for now. We're not going to use it for now because we don't have the gizmos yet, but we can still add this in. Set gizmo active e gizmo type e gizmo type. And we can just copy this comment. Change this activates the gizmo based on the passed in gizmo type. This will also deactivate all other tools and gizmos. And we can change this as well. And gizmos. Because we're only going to want one active at a time. Do we have a tool active or do we have a gizmo active? Okay. I believe that should be good. The gizmo type that we want to set active. Let's create this function. Awesome. So we basically want to do the same thing. So we can copy this and paste this in here. Why? Because I actually want to deactivate all tools. So when you're activating a gizmo, we want to deactivate all tools. And then we eventually want to activate the specified gizmo. And that's going to be a to do. So to do, create the gizmo map and set active. Cool. And then we need to do a to do here as well. To do deactivate all gizmos when map exists. Cool. And then right here, we're going to want to set the actual active tool. So ME active tool type is equal to the passed in tool type. And we want to do the same thing for the gizmos. Okay. ME active gizmo is equal to the passed in gizmo. Cool. That should be good for now. We do have to come back later and do add in the gizmos once we have the concept of the gizmos in. But this should be good for now to allow us to do our toolbar. So now let's go into our tilemap display.cpp and go down to where we're doing our draw toolbar. And let's get it started. So just like the other one, I'm going to have a separator. So ImGui separator. And for our buttons, I'm going to want them kind of scrunched together. So let's go up here. You see how like these are basically right beside each other? That's what I'm going to want to do here. And basically do the same idea. So for that, we can just push some styles. So I can go ImGui, push style var. That's going to be ImGui, style var, frame, border size. That's going to be 1.f. I'm going to say ImGui, push style var, ImGui, style var, item spacing. And for that, we're going to have 0. 0.f, 0.f. Not sure why that's unhappy. It should. Oh, pop. I swore I put push there. You guys probably caught that already. Cool. That's happy now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to want to do is actually have the undo functionality. Instead of using the control buttons, we can have some buttons on the top. And for that, we're going to need the command manager. So let's go auto reference command manager is equal to command manager. Cool. Now we have the command manager. Let's go if command manager. Now we don't have a way to check to see if it's empty. So we're going to have to add that in as well. So let's go to our command manager and add that in. So if we go to close that commands and right here to our abstract command manager, let's go down here. And this will be another public function. We're going to need some public functions for this. And we can do this here. We can go bool undo empty const no except return undo stack dot empty. And we can add a comment. Brief checks to see if there are any commands to undo. Return returns true if empty, false otherwise. And we can copy this and do the redo command. Any commands to redo. Change this to redo. Change this to redo. Awesome. Now we should go around and add comments to these. I'll do that later, but feel free to add them in for yourself. So now that we have the undo and redo, let's go back to our tilemap display. And that will be tilemap display.cpp. Now we can check to see if our undo is empty. Then we're going to want to put something here. I'm going to want to use one of the disabled buttons. ImGui disabled button, and it's going to be icon FA undo, and that's going to be tool button size, and then we're going to have a little comment here. That's going to be undo CTRL plus Z, and then just say nothing to undo. Else, we're going to have a button. And this is just going to be ImGui button, not bullet, button, icon, FA, undo, tool button size. And this one needs to be wrapped in an if statement. So if, then I'm going to want to say command manager undo. Easy, right? And then we can say a tooltip, ImGui item tooltip, and we can just copy this from up here, except without the nothing to do. So copy this, paste that in. Cool. And let's do a same line. All of our buttons we're going to want on the same line. So ImGui same line. Cool. So we have our undo. Now let's do our redo. All we have to do is copy all of this and adjust it for the redo. Now I'm copying the same line as well because there's going to be another button there as well. So we have our command manager. Let's clean this up. And let's change this to redo. Redo. Control plus Shift plus Z. Nothing to redo. Change this to redo. Copy this. Change this to redo. Change this to redo. Awesome. Change this as well. Redo. Cool. So now that we have the redo, I'm going to want to make it in the same line, but I want to do the tools now. Okay. So right here, we can go 0.f and then 32.f. Now I'm doing 32.f here because I want to have it separate or spaced from the undo and redo. We can also put save buttons and other stuff on this side to save the scenes, but we can't do that functionality yet, but we'll get into that. Okay. So we have that, and now we're going to want to get the tool manager and get the active types. So we go auto reference tool manager is equal to tool manager. So we don't actually have a macro for this yet. So let's actually go quickly and add that in. Okay. And the tool manager is controlled by the scene manager. So let's go to there. So scene manager. That will be in our scenes. Scene manager. Here up at the top we have the command manager. Might as well do the same thing. So define tool manager. That's scene manager dot get tool manager. Nope, we don't want to put this semicolon there. We want it like that. And then we can go back here and we have our tool manager. That should be good. Then I can go const e-tool type e active tool type is equal to tool manager dot get active tool type. We can do the same thing for the Gizmo. Change this to active Gizmo and change this to e Gizmo type. Now, I believe in order to actually see these, we're only forward declaring these, so we actually have to include our tool accessories if we haven't already. So let's go up here and make sure. So no, it only has the tool manager. Well, we're going to need the tools accessories. Okay, so we can copy this down, change this to tool accessories. Awesome. Let's go back down. We were right here. The first thing I'm going to want to do is actually just put a disabled button here. It's going to be a disabled button that'll just show a tool. All right, so I can go ImGui disabled button. It's not going to do anything, and it's going to just say icon FA tools. And that's just going to be a tool button size. Right, so we have our disabled button, and I'm going to actually have two of these, one on each side of the tools, and inside we're going to put all of our tool buttons. So I'm going to go ImGui, same line, and then I want to check to see which tools are active and set them accordingly. So if I go if e active gizmo type is equal to e gizmo type translate, then we're going to want to do an active button. ImGui active button icon FA arrows alt, and that's just going to be tool button size. Then we want to do the same thing, basically the same thing that we did in our scene display. So you're going to have your active button, so this is held, right? So this is going to be a held button because it's already active, right? And then we're going to do just a regular button. So if ImGui button icon FA arrows alt tool button size, and this will set the gizmo tool manager dot set gizmo active, and the e gizmo type is going to be translate. Cool. And then we have our tooltip. So ImGui item tooltip, that'll be translate, and eventually we're going to have this set to a quick key for double or for W. That'll be translate / move game objects. Cool. Let's do the same line. ImGui, same line. And I actually want to copy all of this, paste it in, and change this all to scale. So is it scale? Is the scale active? If it is active for scale, I'm going to want to use the FA expand. Now, I've already gone through and looked at the ones that I want to use. You can use whatever you like. Also, feel free to use the image button. So if you want to add an image instead that looks different than what you get from the icon FA or FontAwesome stuff, you can do that as well. So for this, expand, copy this, expand, set gizmo as active, scale. That's it. Change this, scale, this will be E, scale game objects, and let's actually copy it again. We need the same line as well here. Copy, paste, and it's going to be for rotate. Now, rotate is going to be disabled off the hop because we might not actually set up rotate to be able to rotate the game objects, but the option will be there. So rotate, if rotate. Now I didn't find one that I liked for rotate, so I just used the icon FA circle with a notch in it. That's the one I started to use. Notch, and change this to rotate. But I'm actually going to comment all this stuff out here and just put disabled buttons. I'm commenting it out for now just so it's still there. And then I'm just going to put some disabled buttons. So ImGui disabled button. We can copy all this stuff. And then we put our disabled message. That's going to be rotate R. Rotates game object currently Unavailable. Cool. And the same with this, we can comment this out for now. KC. And add another disabled button. Copy this for the tooltip. Paste it in. And we're just going to comment this out for now. So anything to do with the rotate is currently just going to be disabled. All right. So now we can have the same line here. And we're going to want to check our create tools or our tool tile or our tool active tools. Cool. And we can copy all of this. All this here can be copied, and we'll just change it for our tool. Paste. All right. So this can be the active tool. Is it equal to E tool type create tile? If it is, for the create tile, we're just going to use the stamp. So icon FA stamp. Change this right here to stamp. Set Gizmo active needs to be set tool active. And this will be E tool type create tile. And then create tile, we can change this for our tooltip. Create tile. T creates a single tile. Awesome. So we have that same line. Copy all of this. And we do need the same line as well because we want the disabled button for the tools to be there as well. Paste. Cool. Let's change this here from create tile to rect tile. Rect fill tile. And we can change this part to rect fill tile. Now for the button here, I didn't find one that I liked again for that, so I used icon FA chessboard for that. Kind of like a grid, but that worked for me. Rect tool, I don't think I'm missing anything except for this, the tooltip. And the tooltip for this one will be rect tile tool. And we'll have this one be Y. And this one will creates tiles inside of created rectangle. If that makes sense to me. So we have our same line and our disabled button, and we have these two styles that we pushed at the top. We have to make sure that we pop them off right here. So let's pop those styles. ImGui pop style, not color, style var. And that'll be 2. And then I want to add my separator, ImGui separator. ImGui. Let's add a space, just 1. And let's take a look to see how that works. Or if it works. So we have our DrawToolbar. Let's make sure we're calling that. We are. And let's build. Awesome. And moment of truth. Click on this. Awesome. Okay, so that looks a bit funny. They look very small. So we're going to have to fix that. Yeah, I don't like how small those look in comparison, but it's doing what we want. So right now it's active set for the rectile tool. When we change this, look at that. It starts switching. Oh, so it's not deactivating the tools. We need to do that. So this one and this one shouldn't be active at the same time. So we need to go and fix that. And tool manager. Yeah. So after we deactivate all the gizmos, we also, like, this will actually deactivate the actual tool itself or the gizmo itself. We need to actually tell it that the ME active gizmo is equal to E gizmo type no gizmo. And we need to do the same thing for the tool when we set the gizmo active. So once we deactivate all the tools, we need to go ME active tool is equal to e tool, no tool. Okay. We want all this done in the back end. We don't want any of this done in the actual tile map display. It needs to know nothing of how to actually deactivate the tools. Okay. So that should work. And let's go take a look. So it says that we have to shrink down the font size. And it looks like I don't really want to do this. So let's just change this. Instead of being 13, let's change it to 16. Let's take this. Let's just try putting this here. For now, let's see if that works. And we'll comment this out. Control KC. And let's see how that looks. And it looks a bit off here as well. They're not directly centered. So, looks like we need to add an offset. I like the size of it. Let's see if that worked. So yeah, now when we select the tool, it's turning the other ones off. That's what I want. So here. So min x advance based on the font size. Let's do this. Oh, there is no min advance. Why? Let's go icons, config dot glyph offset is equal to ImVec2. And we want it to go down a bit, so 0.f, I don't know, 2.f. Let's see how that looks. This could probably be that. Let's see. Some of this stuff is going to be trial and error. Let's see. Awesome. That looks good to me. Could probably go down a bit more, but that looks good. All right. So we can set the tools. Let's make sure this works. The gizmos don't work because we don't even have the concept of the gizmo yet. But let's actually try to see if it changes our tools for us. Let's bring this in here. Let's make sure that the undo and redo work and all of that. So we go to tile set. We'll add a tile set. We don't have any, so we need to load the scene back into here. So we have this now. Hill tiles. Grab this, and right now it should be a stamp tool. It shouldn't even let us. It shouldn't let us do this without a tile there, so that's a bug. Let's see. Yeah, so with our rect tool, see, it won't let us do it without a layer. So now that we have a layer, we have to. So that's a bug that we're gonna have to fix. So it didn't set the rect tool active. Has a layer. Why didn't it set the rect tool active when we did this? Let's fix that. But we have our undo. Does that work? Yay, the undo and the redo work on these buttons. Now let's go see why our rect tool didn't get activated. First, let's go here, make sure that we're actually setting the rect tool. Set active tool, rect. Yep. Okay. Set active tool. So that deactivates, that's correct. This one should activate it. Let's just put a breakpoint there and see. So we're already activating it. Which tool are we activating? Rect fill tile, and that's from the constructor. Because that's the one that's default. So let's just click on this. Cool, that sets it. We're activating it too. Create tile. Map tile tools, there should only be 2. Yep. Tool type, E-type. Cool. So it's activated. Let's click this one. Yeah, it should be working. Surprised it didn't work. Well, let's see. Cool. So let's load our scene. scene, get the textures, go back to our scene. Should be rectile, tile details, add, new layer. Oh, that worked that time. Let's go to create tile. Cool. Get rid of that breakpoint. So now it's not letting me create tile. Let's go to tile set. Tile details. So we got a bug there. All right. So after some digging there, I just found that the problem is this. We're not setting the camera. So we need to make sure that everything is set when we're changing tools. So we're switching the tool, but it's got no camera active. So when we go to active tool, it doesn't do any updating. So it'll go right in and get canvas, abstract tool update right here. And it's just going to leave because we didn't set the camera and we didn't set the registry. And we do that on scene change, if you remember. So let's stop this. Lots of little fixes today to get this to work. So if we stop this and we go to our Tilemap display, and we have the load new scene function, I believe it's called. Let's go to load new scene. And this is the time when we're setting up the tool. And we're only setting up the active tool. Well, we need to adjust this. We can't just set up the one active tool because the tools are always going to be there, right? We're never going to get rid of the tool. So we actually want to set up all the tools. So let's, instead of just setting up this tool by itself, we'll keep this function for the active tool, but we'll add another function to our tool manager to set all the tools. Does that make sense? So let's go to our tool manager.h and let's create a new function, and it will be called setup tools. Basically the same idea as in the active tool. We'll copy that. Let's go to this here. I believe it's in this function, or in this here. Or is it an abstract tool function? Yeah. Setup tool. We want that. So let's copy this. Tool manager, and down here, paste, and we'll call this setup tools. Okay, now taking the scene object, and we'll say calls setup tool for all tools and eventually gizmos. Cool. Now, are we already forward declaring this stuff? Let's go to the top. So we are not. So we need to forward declare the scene and the camera. So the scene is a class, I believe. And we need to do the camera as well. So we need this. Actually, this can stay there. We'll do another one right here. We can go namespace class Control KD, and let's give this a second to catch up. Cool, that caught up. Let's make this function, and all I'm going to want to do is loop through all of my tools and set them up. Okay, so just for auto reference e-type p tool in map tools. Then we say if not p tool setup tool, because that returns a bool. We can go p scene object and p camera. This can just be return false, or we can do some type of a search or whatever. This should always work for us. And then we're going to want to do the same thing. So to do setup gizmos. And this can be true. If it makes it there, we're going to want to be true. Now we can go back into our Tilemap display. and make some adjustments here. So we got a bunch of errors. So we have our current scene, we want that, and we're gonna want to, we don't need the active tool anymore. We can change this to go, actually we might need the active tool, but not right there. Let's grab all of this. Put an if here, because we're gonna still need an if. And we'll do our active tool stuff right here. We're going to need it. We don't need to set it up anymore. And then if there's an active tool, do that. Where's this from? We can get rid of this. This can go over here. Cool. This can go here. All right. So now, instead of calling the active tool and doing setup on each tool, we actually want to call the tool manager and set up all tools for the proper scene. Okay, so if not scene, actually we don't even have to do that. We can go tool manager dot set up tools p current scene dot get and mp tilemapcam dot get. Cool, that should work for us. And instead of calling tool manager each time, we can actually go auto reference tool manager is equals to tool manager. Take this, paste that in there. Same with this one. Paste that in there. Cool. Let's see if this works. We got some errors. Let's fix these. So if we go back to tool manager, the issue could be up here. We need to include the camera now. So rendering core camera. And we're also going to have to do the scene as well, because it needs to know what the scene object is. Include editor scene object. I believe that should be fine. I think that might be, it's still all errored. I'm confused. Oh, I think I'm dumb. Yeah. This should not be there, and that's causing an issue. This needs to be outside of this namespace and in here. Control KD. Control KD. Ugh. Control KD. Let's get rid of this. It's not necessary. Let's go back into the tilemap display. KD. That's one problem that should be fixed. Let's do a rebuild. All right, I think we're good now. One forward declare in the wrong spot and it's over. Let's build again. All right, so it built finally. So let's load our map like we were doing. Here, load our scene, and fix any errors that we may have. So now we should have the rec tool, and everything should have been set for us. So let's make sure, let's run this. So we have that, go back here, change our tile set, and it should be the rec tool. When we come back over, and I go to add layer, so we have our layer, hill tiles, rec tool, and we'll just make a few squares. Our undo works, redo works. Let's change it to create tile. And we're probably going to reset the tile set. And yes, one tile at a time. That worked. Let's go to here. It should no longer be doing that. Go back to this. Yes. Go back to here. There we go. Looks like it's working. Change it to this. This eventually will be our translate. Our undos all work. Redos all work. There we go, guys. All right, that's it. So that's it for this video. We started adding in our toolbars, and we're going to add toolbars for all these windows. We're going to change up the tile sets, do different things, and that's up to you guys however you want to do it. I'm going to go do it in the background the way that I want to do it, the way I want to set it up. Feel free to set yours up the way that you want to do it. And in the next video, we're going to start getting into either the gizmos or we're going to start getting into the content browser. It's up to you guys. Let me know in the comments if you'd rather do gizmos first or the content browser. They both have to be done, so let me know in the comments below. Make sure you give it a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And that's it. Take it easy.